Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Okay, this week on the Paracast, it's just me, Gene Steinberg. Chris O'Brien is on assignment, and he'll be back next week. In the meantime, and we'll introduce him in just a moment, but we have a guest who's written a fascinating book called It Came from Ohio. And when I saw that title, I first thought of a movie from the 1950s called It Came from Outer Space. But maybe there's a slight connection we're going to find out from James Renner. But right now, let me just tell our listeners that we've gotten some just really good reactions to recent shows. It's been all-star all the time. Last week, for example, we had Ted Rowe of NARCAP, the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena, where they call, you've heard of them, right? They call UFOs UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, and really gracious guests, a lot of good information. We had the wild, outspoken guest, George Wingfield, the week before. But a little bit later, early in July, we're going to be featuring our old friend Nick Redfern, who we've made a guest co-host because sometimes he comes back and serves in that capacity. But every year he comes out with a couple of really fascinating books, and his latest one is called Close Encounters of the Fatal Kind, subtitled Suspicious Deaths, Mysterious Murders, and Bizarre Disappearances in UFO History. That's coming in early July, Nick Redfern. But today, it came from Ohio. The author is James Renner. He's a journalist, he's a blogger, a novelist, and in his spare time, it says here, he hunts serial killers. Better you than me, James. Let me ask you before we go on with a few other things. How does one get involved in the hobby of chasing after a serial killer? And do you ever wonder if they might chase back after you?
You know, when I was a reporter at this magazine in Cleveland called Scene, and I also worked for the Free Times for a while, we had this editor. His name was Pete Kotz, a big surly guy, an old man from the sea character. I once went to him with that question, and I said, you know, what about these people that I'm writing about, these killers? Won't they come after me? And he said, Jimmy, they never come after the writer. They go after your sources. So don't worry about it. So, you know, I've never, and he's right. It's never happened where they've come after me. Luckily, they didn't kill any of my sources either, but they generally don't go after the people that write the stories.
That assumes a measure of sanity or insanity, and I don't want to start a trend.
Yeah, right.
Now, let me tell you another story. Now, back in the 1970s, I was working as assistant news director for a country radio station in Charleston, South Carolina. And there was a funny scene there where our news director would do an evening gig at one of the local TV stations. And you'd see him wearing this sports jacket or suit every night. And one evening, live on the air, they pulled his desk, the anchor's desk, away from him, and he was wearing shorts. So, James Renner, obviously we're doing radio, and we only see a picture of you somewhere in the woods, probably escaping a serial killer, with a sign on your left. I'm going to ask you what that sign reads in a moment. But let me ask you, are you wearing shorts?
You'll never know. You'll never know. I could be in my tidy whities and a T-shirt on this end. I'll leave it to your imagination or your deepest, darkest nightmares, I guess. But no, it's good to know I can get away with that. I'll play some pocket hockey on this end.
Remember, radio is a theater of the mind. Or they said a mind is a terrible thing to waste. So if it comes to wasting minds, we're here to do it. All right, let's talk about your book. It Came from Ohio.
Yeah.
What inspired you to get involved in the weird, the unusual, the paranormal?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I was a crime reporter for about 7-8 years up in Cleveland, and what I discovered was I'd go and report on these crimes, and I'd go into a person's house, and I have to ask them about this murder or this serial killer or some scary person. And we talk about that case, and then it got to the point where I realized that some people just wait until they find somebody that collects stories. And as soon as they knew that I was interested in collecting stories, even though I was there talking about a different case, they would invariably want to tell me about this one weird thing that happened in their life, or this one weird story that they heard around the campfire when they were little. And I think people just give reporters, they kind of download all the weird stuff that's ever happened to them. And so I started collecting these random little bits of bizarre stories from across Ohio. And then in my spare time, I started looking into them the way I would research a crime. And I would go after sources, original source material. And I wanted to collect maybe about the top dozen or 13 different, what I consider the most credible, weird stories in Ohio history. And so that's kind of how the book came out over the course of about 10 years.
Now, this is not a large book here. It's
No,
a pretty small book. It comes up to being like 112 pages or plus the cover. You can read it in a couple of hours.
Sure. And, one of the reasons I did that is to make it super cheap as an ebook. I wanted to get an ebook out there and get people so that they were familiar with my writing. And so I think you can even get it as an ebook for like $2 or something like that.
All right. So there's no excuse for anyone in our audience, we have a worldwide audience, not to get a copy if it came from Ohio. But let me ask you the most obvious question our listeners will wonder about. Have you personally had any unusual experiences you'd like to reveal?
Yeah, I'll tell a story that didn't even make it into the book. It's weird to share it because, I consider myself a skeptic. And that's the way I went into researching some of these stories, even though I came out where, a handful were stories I just can't explain, even to this day. But this one thing happened to me, and I told my wife about this when we got together, and she looked at me really funny, and thankfully still married me after it. But I was about 8 years old, and I was living out in the boonies of Portage County, south of Kent, Ohio, which is in northeast Ohio. And I grew up on this farm, and behind our farm we had these Indian burial mounds, which is the perfect setting for a Stephen King story, right?
Always.
And we had the professor from Kent State come out and tell us, yes, in fact, these are Indian burial mounds. This is the tribe they were from, and this is how old they are. Just don't mess with them. So one day I was out there with my stepbrother, same age as I was. We were both 8 at the time, I believe. And we went very old school, went out to the woods to pick berries to make into a pie. His mother was going to make it into a pie. And so we were out there picking berries, and all of a sudden we both got this feeling that we were being watched. And we kind of looked at each other, and then this, I swear to God, this 3-foot-tall thing jumped out of the bushes and kind of yelled at us. And it was about 3 feet tall, maybe shorter, maybe more like 2 feet, 2.5 feet. It was dressed in these raggedy clothing, and in my mind would appear to have been something like, it looked like a troll. It looked like a troll from a kid's story. And so we screamed, dropped the berries, ran back to the house, got in trouble for dropping the berries. Eventually, the stepmother went out and got the berry bowl. And our parents got divorced shortly after that, and I didn't see my brother for many, many years. I tell my wife the story. She's like, nah. She's like, you're just remembering it wrong. Something, that can't be. It must be a dream or something. And I got to where I was kind of believing her. Then I was reunited with this brother, Kyle is his name. And we happened to both be at the same birthday party. And this was just like a year or two ago. So 20-some years have passed. And I look at my wife and I said, I'm going to ask him about this. I said, we'll finally see if he remembers anything. So I go up to him, and she's with me, and we're in the kitchen. And I say, Kyle, there's something about our childhood that I really need to ask you about, and it's going to sound totally crazy.
What if we don't do this break? It's going to be even crazier because every single one of our sponsors will line up and they'll complain they're not getting their announcements. They paid all these big bucks to get these announcements on the show, and it's not being announced. Our guest is James Renner. The book is It Came from Ohio, and we're going to find out if his brother Kyle remembered this crazy thing that happened when they were together and they were young. You're in the Paracast.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and the Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Talk to a sales rep at iWeb.com. Use the promo code TechNightOwl for a special discount.
Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
Question: could too many GMO foods and toxins be overloading your digestive and immune systems? Answer: yes. If you're searching for a powerful detox that's gentle enough to use every day, use Pro EM1 from Terraganics. Pro EM1 is a powerful liquid probiotic that uses good bacteria to suppress pathogens and gently eliminate toxins from your body. A healthy digestive system will cleanse and remove toxins, support weight loss, improve absorption of food nutrients, and aid in controlling yeast and other infections. Pro EM1 is made with only non-GMO and certified organic ingredients, has no preservatives, and is dairy, soy, wheat, and gluten-free. Pro EM1 is the key to your digestive health. Order Pro EM1 Daily Probiotic Cleanse at Terraganics.com, spelled Terraganix.com, or call toll-free 866-369-3678. That's 866-369-3678. Also available through Amazon Prime. Pro EM1 from Terraganics. Life's getting better.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Here on the Paracast, this Gene Steinberg. Chris O'Brien is away on assignment. He's in Illinois, so we decided to get a guest. We couldn't find one in Illinois. Of course, there are guests in Illinois. We got somebody from Ohio. It's James Renner, author of It Came From Ohio. And when I asked him if he remembered any childhood experiences with strange things, he remembered something that happened with his brother. But they were separated for many years. They finally get together, and he asks Kyle, his brother, whether or not he remembers the incident. So?
Yeah. So I ask him, I say, there's this... something odd I have to ask you about our childhood. It's going to sound ridiculous. And before I could get it out, he stopped me and he said, you mean the little man that jumped out at us when we were picking berries? And my wife, her expression just went totally blank. And we both went white. oh my gosh, this really did happen, whatever it was we saw that day. A couple years after that happened, I was still living on the property. I was probably about 12 or 13, and I went back out to that same area out by the burial mounds. I came around to turn in the path, and there was this thing in the middle of the path, in the middle of the woods by these burial mounds that looked like no kind of dog I've ever seen. It was kind of like a greyhound, except 4 times as large, and it had more fur than any greyhound I've ever seen. And it just kind of regarded me, and I looked back at it, and then I slowly backed away and went back into the house. So there are some strange things happening back in those woods that I've never been able to explain.
Now, in that case, was it regarding you as a potential dinner or an invader? I don't know. Now, the little person you saw with your brother.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe it was a little person wearing some kind of coat or something. Maybe somebody left over from The Wizard of Oz and, getting on in years and just hanging out.
Well, he did have a giant lollipop. So, I don't know.
Could have been a child.
Oddly enough, that's probably the best explanation. I found out, because I shared this story on Reddit one day. There was some question up about what's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you. And somebody got back and sent me a link to a story about this little person who back in the 80s, which the time frame fits, he was going around mostly Pennsylvania and West Virginia, but for kicks, he would go out to like Girl Scout camps or Boy Scout camps and wait in the woods and dress up like this raggedy leprechaun. And when the kids would walk by, he would leap out and try to scare them. He'd take a couple friends with him and they'd all laugh about it. And that was, so it's exactly what happened to us, but why he would decide to camp out in our woods is beyond me, because it wasn't really a high traffic area for kids.
Of course, nowadays, parents wouldn't let their kids go anywhere. We live in a different world nowadays.
Oh, I know. I used to ride my bike, all my Huffy 2-speed, all over the county out there.
You have kids?
I do. I have 2. I have a boy that's 7 years old and a little girl that's 2.
And the 7-year-old you wouldn't let out of your sight?
Oh, no. He joined Cub Scouts recently, and I'm hovering like a hawk at all of his campouts and meetings and things like that.
That's the way it was when my son was 7, which was a long time ago. We did precisely the same thing. Okay, so all told, James Renner, have you had any other unusual experiences that you might want to mention?
We live not far from this place in Ravenna called the Arsenal. It's a military base in Northeast Ohio that is not on any map, but everybody that lives there has seen it and knows it's there. They just call it the Arsenal. I don't know what the real name is for it, but there are a lot of reports about lights, strange lights around the area. And on a couple occasions, my father and I actually saw some strange lights in the sky, this, 4 or 5 in a formation that would get straight above you and then disappear, or things in the distance. And I lived actually where I grew up out there by the Arsenal is one township over from this famous case where a Portage County deputy and his partner back in 1966 encountered a flying saucer and chased it all the way into western Pennsylvania.
I want to ask you about that next.
Okay.
But let's go back to this military base near you and what you saw. Then we'll go into Portage County. And by the way, that incident found its way in somewhat modified form into one of the early sequences of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And you also learn how sometimes a UFO sighting is so traumatic as to almost ruin someone's life. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's go back to your experiences.
Okay. Yeah, it was mostly that. It was, we'd see these bizarre lights in the sky, and they were unexplained, mostly over the area of the Arsenal. I'd get scared because I'd be little, and my dad played up on that a little bit too, because we're not far from the Goodyear blimp hangar. And I remember one day I'm in the house and he comes running inside and says, "The lights are back, the lights are back. It's right above us. I think it's an invasion." And I go running out to see what it is, and I look up in the sky and there's just hovering above our house are these bright lights just right out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. Flying saucers have invaded us. And then all of a sudden the lights formed into the brand that is Goodyear. And I realized it was the blimp.
So in large part, what you saw was probably something conventional.
I'd say for the most part, what we were seeing was probably conventional or military aircraft. Although the way some of these lights behaved out there were beyond any capability that we publicly know about.
Anyway, Portage County. Now, this is the scene early in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And most of you have heard about the case, but there's something which the late Paul Harvey used to call the rest of the story that James is going to tell us about in a moment.
Yeah.
But he'll first tell you about the sighting. Of course, it was kind of exaggerated for the movie where you have these police officers chasing a UFO from one state to another. Tell us what really happened and what happened to one of the witnesses, who, by the way, is Floyd. Let's go on.
So, yeah, the story begins in 1966.
And we have 35 seconds left, so let's start it here and continue in the next segment. Go ahead.
Okay. It begins in 1966. There's this deputy sheriff named Dale Spaur, and he is there with his partner Wilbur Neff, and they're patrolling the back roads of Portage County. But they've got the midnight shift, and it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're driving down 224, and on the side of the road they see this truck, and it's a weird truck that has these strange military-like symbols on it, a triangle with a lightning bolt in the center, with words around it that says 7 steps to hell. And inside the truck is all this electronic equipment. And so they get out to investigate it and figure out where the driver is. And as soon as they step out, this saucer, according to police reports that Spaur made later, the saucer rose up from the trees behind the car and hovered above the road, and it was so bright it was like daylight outside.
The book is It Came from Ohio. We'll hear about Dale Spaur and his partner and what happened to Dale. More coming. You're in the Paracast.
Minds think alike. The network for the independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network. GCN.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the Earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
Americans have always been ready to defend, to serve, and to honor those who defended and are defending all of us. So this month, the Freeze Dry Guy honors and serves Americans with our meat, rice, and potato sale. Our unit includes 4 number 10 cans of quality Mountain House cooked diced beef, ground beef, diced chicken, white rice, and 2 cans of FDG dehydrated diced potatoes. 158 servings per case unit. And during the Freeze Dry Guy's meat, rice, and potato sale, get 1 case for only $1.79, 2 cases for only $3.55, or get 3 cases for only $5.15, and all come with lots of valuable freebies. For details, click freezedryguy.com and hurry. Sale ends soon. Go to freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD. Plus free shipping to the lower 48 states from the Freeze Dry Guy. The finest freeze-dried and dehydrated foods available anywhere for long-term storage.
This alert just came in. This special announcement is for business owners and leaders of organizations who've been waiting for the right time to build. General Steel has made it impossible to wait any longer with rock-bottom prices that could save you thousands. That's right, General Steel, America's leader in pre-engineered structures, is offering buildings at prices you will never see again. Don't miss these prices. A 50 by 100 for $35,000. You heard right. That's 5,000 square feet for $35,000. Manufacturers, if you need a larger building, try a 100 by 100 commercial building for $129,000. You can't afford to rent with these prices. Imagine a 70 by 100 foot church building for under $69,000. With the economy improving and interest rates still at historic lows, you can't afford to wait. So call 866-91-STEEL. Lock in your price now. Call 866-91-STEEL. That's 866-917-8335.
There are many things the human body can do very well, but maintaining the proper pH level isn't always one of them. That's where AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops can make a world of difference. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps your body do what's natural. Just a few drops a day helps rid your body of harmful waste and acid while promoting health and restoring vibrance and energy. Alkalizing boosts your immune system and can help fight headaches, irritability, cramping, and insomnia. Alkalizing also helps the body fight depression and even bone loss. To learn more about the importance of alkalizing and how you can find life-changing and vital balance, please visit AlkaVision's brand new website at alkavision.com. Same great products, but now easier to use and more informative than ever before. To get your very own Plasma pH Drops for just $29.95, call 800-518-7615 or visit alkavision.com. That's ALKA vision.com. Alkalize your body and supercharge your health at the new alkavision.com.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
James Renner joins us. The book is It Came from Ohio. We're exploring all the weird cases. But the one in Portage County, Ohio, where a couple of police officers, they see this flying saucer that just lights up the entire area.
Mm-hmm.
What happened next?
It's like daylight, and so Dale radios into dispatch and describes what they have out there, and he describes it as, I think Wilbur described it as an upside-down ice cream cone. It was a saucer, but it had this weird little part that stuck out on the top, and seemed to be using the light as a propellant. It was kind of like hovering on top of the light source. And they radio into dispatch, and of course, dispatch, what does dispatch tell them? Shoot it down. And so Dale Spaur pulls his weapon, and when he does, this thing takes off down the road. And it's old Route 14 that it kind of heads down, this old route. So they get in their cruiser, and they give chase. And as they start going, this disc goes faster and faster until they're driving in speeds of excess of 100 miles an hour.
It's like it was allowing them to keep up, but not going too fast to make it impossible.
That's what Spaur thought. That's what he said later on. He had a feeling that it was enjoying the chase or wanted them to chase it. So this is a really good story in many ways, mostly because of the witnesses, the credible witnesses that pop up around this piece. Because they're all police officers. Along the chase, Spaur and Neff are joined by police in two other jurisdictions. And so you've got three different police cruisers shooting down old Route 14 after this flying saucer. It must have been a very interesting sight for people to see as they're waking up that morning. And they get all the way to western Pennsylvania. They cross the border into PA, and just as they're getting across the border, the cruiser starts to sputter. It's just had too much. They've driven it too fast and too hard. They pull into a gas station. The cruiser finally stops. It's dead. It never drives again. And the disc hovers for a minute and then shoots up into space, never to be seen.
Interesting that as soon as the car was disabled, the flying saucer pilots had enough?
Yeah. Yeah. I have my own theories as to where it came from, but that's the general story that I had heard growing up, because I grew up not too far from where this happened, and it was always a rumor. And so it was one of the stories I looked into. And you alluded to Paul Harvey, right? The rest of the story, and eventually I did get the rest of the story.
Now, understand here, officially the Air Force said it was something conventional.
Well, actually, okay, yeah, that's another part of the story we should mention.
Or at least the Air Force did, but maybe Dr. J. Allen Hynek didn't.
Mm-hmm. So after the sighting, Spaur and Neff return home. Somebody gives them a lift back. The cruiser never works again. They might have ridden with the tow company. When they get back, Project Blue Book arrives a couple days later, led by Hector Quintanilla and J. Allen Hynek, of course. And they come into town and they interview Spaur and Neff and the other officers involved in the chase. And actually, Quintanilla speaks to the newspapers and says that what they were chasing was the planet Venus. This is what Spaur saw rising from the trees and lighting up the ground like it was daytime and chasing all the way into western PA.
You see, Venus was moonlighting. It didn't like being a planet all the time and having a hot surface, so it decided to moonlight. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. So Spaur was so angry at that. And, of course, the papers picked up on that, and they just had their fun with it. They made Spaur look like this kind of bumbling idiot that chased Venus all the way into PA and really gave him a hard time. He ended up, the last anybody had heard from Dale Spaur before I reported on it and started researching the case was about 6 months after the UFO incident. A reporter found him living out of a hotel, eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on making $50 a week. He had lost his job as deputy sheriff. He had lost his family. He had gotten a divorce. And it was all traced back to the story in that night with the UFO, and it completely destroyed his life.
Now, understand something. Before I got a hold of you, I was doing some research on this story.
Oh.
Okay? And it was helping out James Fox and Tracy Torme, where they have a motion picture called 701, the movie. And I did some research for them. And they wanted to decide whether to include this case or not. So I did some research, and everything that you check online ends at the fact that Dale Spaur was found 6 months after the incident, living in a cheap hotel, having given up his entire former life. Yeah. But you, amongst everybody, decided to find out what happened next, because that's back in 1966, and you're working on the book in the 2000s. Mm-hmm. So what happened to Dale Spaur?
Well, I got lucky. What we did was we published the original story about this incident in Scene magazine, and shortly after it was published, I got an email from Dale Spaur's son. His name, he goes by James Evans now because he was adopted by his stepfather after his parents got a divorce. But he looks exactly like his father. Dale Spaur was a abnormally large man, just all around big. I think he was 6'7". It's hard to come across in the pictures, but just a giant. And his son's the same way. His son's just a big guy. He was in the Marines and not the type of guy you'd want to mess with. And we met up at a place called Mike's Place in Kent, which was a very appropriate place to meet because anybody from that area knows Mike's Place is the seedy restaurant with the giant X-Wing fighter parked out front that the owner made out of old fabricated steel. So we met inside, and he told me the rest of the story about what happened to his father, and it's just as interesting. According to his son, and I've checked this out enough to verify that Spaur was where he said he was this whole time. According to his son, after he was in that hotel living on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, he decided to move back to West Virginia, where his family was from. And he got a job in a mine out there, an old coal mine. And one day, he was in the lift, and it malfunctioned. He fell down this shaft and broke his back and several other bones, and ended up in this coma for about a month. And James remembers going to the hospital to visit his dad when he was still in the coma. and in this hospital, and he was in the waiting room, or in the hallway right outside his room with his mother. And it was time for the daily cleaning and sponge bath. And the nurse goes in to take care of his father, who, mind you, is still in a coma. All of a sudden, and has not had a chance to talk to any of the doctors or nurses. They don't know anything about the story in Ohio. All of a sudden, the nurse screams and goes running out of the room. And when they finally calm her down, they asked her what's wrong. And all she would say was, that is not a human. That man is not human. There's something inside of him. And so that's always kind of given me the creeps. And so Spaur eventually woke up a couple weeks later and recuperated. He moved to Lakewood and bought a bar called The Avenue, I believe. A very popular bar on Detroit Street in Lakewood, Ohio, which is by Cleveland. And that's what he did for the rest of his life. He bartended and ran this bar with his new wife up in Rocky River. And he did that for about 20 years until he eventually died of natural causes. The one other thing that James told me was that he remembers being at his funeral, his father's funeral in 1982, I believe it was. And this tribe of Native Americans showed up at the funeral.
All right. That's a good cliffhanger. Why did the tribe of Native Americans show up at Dale Spaur's funeral? James Renner joins us. You're in the Paracast.
Not just an alternative to the mainstream media. We're the premier independent talk radio network. We are GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Imagine an acne treatment breakthrough that even Proactive says is better than Proactive. Announcing all new Proactive Plus, the revolutionary new way to clear your skin from the #1 name in acne care. Proactive Plus is our best, most effective solution ever. And when you call 1-800-721-4255 today, you can have it tomorrow. Proactive Plus is the modern acne miracle that treats your skin beautifully. The plus means more. More precise, targeted medicine for faster, gentler acne prevention. And more skin-loving solutions so your complexion can look bright and beautiful.
I am just so happy with Proactive Plus. I don't think my skin has ever looked this good.
Call 1-800-721-4255. Be one of the first to try Proactive Plus. Guaranteed 100% risk-free. You won't see this limited time offer on TV. It's a radio exclusive. 1-800-721-4255. 1-800-721-4255.
For over 5 years, you've been hearing about the Berkey Guy, so you may know a few things about him. For example, you are well aware of the superior quality and effectiveness of Berkey water filters and accessories. But did you know the Berkeys have had independent lab tests done to prove just how effective they are? It's true, and he can email you the test results. Just visit goberkey.com. You may also know that the Berkey Guy has helped tens of thousands of people get better prepared. Now here's something you may not know. GoBerkey.com has amazing specials and deals all the time on a wide variety of survival and preparedness products, most ready to ship same day. Visit the Berkey Guy at GoBerkey.com and be sure to click the red Products on Sale Now button. You can always call toll-free 877-886-3653. Again, that's 877-886-3653. GoBerkey.com, home of the Berkey Guy.
Ouch! My back is out again.
Hi, Dr. Ortman with Wellspring Spinal Care. If you're experiencing neck, mid, or lower back pain, this information is for you. One of the complaints that I hear is patients receive their typical adjustment, only having to repeat them as the pain returns. Putting the bones back in place is only half of the battle. At Wellspring Spinal Care, we have the entire solution. We use the NUCA approach, utilizing three-dimensional x-rays and gentle touch technology to deliver specific correction. We then design a custom nutritional supplement program which provides essential nutrients targeting the areas of concern. With a NUCA approach and proper nutrition, you'll be on your way to a faster and more permanent recovery. To get you on the road to wellness, visit drortman.com. That's drortman.com. Or call us today, 952-303-9124. That's 952-303-9124. Wellspring Spinal Care, chiropractic done right.
Hi, this is Don Ecker, and you are tuned into the Paracast. Let me tell you what, you're going to hear stuff here that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Hear that, George Snorri?
We're on the Paracast. I'm Gene Steinberg. Chris O'Brien's on special assignment. We're having a little fun this week. We're talking to James Renner, author of It Came From Ohio. He's talking about the strange case of Dale Spaur, who was really traumatized after he saw a UFO. Now, James, how old was Spaur when he died? Couldn't have been very old.
No, I think he was in his 60s, I think. Early 60s? He wasn't that old.
Okay, the question I have here is, how did the flying saucer get named Floyd?
Yeah. So he always referred to this this flying saucer as Floyd. Anybody asked him about it, and he would say, they'd ask him, "Hey, Dale, have you seen Floyd this week?" Because another thing that Spaur had told his family and his partners and his friends was that after the chase into western Pennsylvania, he'd go outside at night behind his house, and he said this thing would be hovering, above his house in the sky, and whatever it was visiting him over and over again. And he decided to start calling the flying saucer Floyd, which is very interesting because Floyd is Dale Spaur's middle name. So it was an odd choice for him.
All right, so he kept seeing this object over and over again.
Oh, yeah. That's what he'd mentioned to friends and family, although nobody else has come forward saying that they were with him when he had these further sightings. I eventually tracked down Wilbur Neff, Dale's partner, who was with him that night of the chase, and Neff lives in Florida now, or did a few years ago when we spoke, and he corroborates everything from the reports and is adamant that what they saw that night was extraterrestrial, but doesn't like talking about it. His quote was that before he saw the UFO, he'd always look up into the skies because he was fascinated by planes and all that. He said ever since then, he just keeps his eyes on the ground because it's brought nothing but heartache.
I understand that. Wow. Now, you said when we first started talking about this case that you had some ideas as to what they saw.
Yeah. We had mentioned the Native Americans. There's really not much more to that story, although the family, nobody had invited this Native American tribe that showed up at Dale Spaur's funeral. They just showed up on their own, and as soon as he was buried, they kind of quietly went away. So nobody, to this day, nobody really knows about, what that was all about. But I have some theories about what it could be. What I found interesting was a connection that nobody else had made before, which was if you keep going down Old Route 14 in the direction that this flying saucer was traveling, you will come to the town of Kecksburg. It goes right into Kecksburg. And of course, anybody that's familiar with UFO lore knows Kecksburg is the site of a crash, a supposed flying saucer crash that occurred in, 1965? December 1965? So I've always wondered if what they saw that night wasn't a reconnaissance ship searching for this downed saucer in Kecksburg.
The Kecksburg incident occurred December 9th, 1965. And we've had several shows about it over the years.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think this was really a conventional aircraft, but then if they're outside and the craft is that close, wouldn't they hear a noise?
You would think. Well, here's the theory that I've come up with. Because we've got the arsenal out there, which wasn't far from where Spaur started chasing this UFO. And you have to remember the fact of how all this started, which is they were investigating this abandoned vehicle. And it wasn't just any abandoned vehicle. It was an abandoned vehicle that was filled with strange electronic equipment that seemed military, that was parked right behind where this flying saucer supposedly came out of the ground. I think, or up from the trees. I think it was some sort of military craft, and that vehicle was there to fix it. Perhaps, the extraterrestrial connection that you could make. And I'm open to the idea that there are extraterrestrials, certainly. The connection you can make is that whatever it was, perhaps it was whatever they recovered from Kecksburg. The arsenal is one of the closest places they could have shipped it. Maybe they decided to give it a test flight. Let's see if we can get this baby up in the air. And it came down in the woods. They sent a guy to fix it. And when it came up, oh my gosh, there's cops here. We got to get out of here. We can't let them see us drive it back into the arsenal. So perhaps that's what happened. That's the best explanation I can come up with.
Well, it's a conventional explanation. Whether it fits the facts, I don't know. But certainly the thing here is, though, if it was a conventional aircraft, you think a middle-aged police officer would be smart enough to know that and not get completely freaked out over it.
Well, I guess it depends on what your definition of conventional is. I certainly don't think it was a plane. I think it was either, something that was recovered from Kecksburg. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it was being flown by humans. Was it a recovered extraterrestrial craft, or was it something that the military was designing in secret? I think it could have been either one of those. So I guess conventional is the wrong word. It certainly wasn't, an airplane or anything like that. But I do believe it was piloted by human intelligence.
Now, have you done any further studies into UFO cases? Certainly this is one of the more notable ones, particularly in the way that Dale Spaur's life was so screwed up after it happened. Have you found any other cases worth mentioning related to UFOs?
I like this case there's another case in here I talk about it came from Ohio, this case out of Mansfield. And again, it has military connections, and it's good from a reporting standpoint because of the sources. It involves 4 men traveling in a helicopter over Mansfield who encountered what they claim to this day was a flying saucer, and that they were captured in its tractor beam. And it was a green tractor beam of some sort. It all happened over the skies of Mansfield, and I believe it was back in 1972. And I like this story for a couple reasons. Each of these witnesses inside the helicopter were very intelligent people. Some were scientists. They all went on to do great things with their life. At the time, they were in the Air Force reserves, I believe. And they had just what nobody had reported on. Everybody reported on this sighting and this encounter with a UFO over Mansfield. What got lost in the reporting was the fact of what they were doing up in the sky to begin with. They were coming back from a evaluation at Wright-Patt Air Force Base, and they were flying back to Cleveland in this helicopter, and they had gone out there to do a series of psychological tests, which is interesting for many reasons. Wright-Patterson, as anybody into this lore knows, is supposedly where they took the crashed disc that crashed into Roswell, New Mexico back in 1947. It supposedly ended up in Hangar 18 out at Wright-Patt. But Wright-Patt's also known as one of the places where the military was developing very odd psychological and chemical weapons during the Cold War. So you've got these 4 men that had just had a psychological eval, at Wright Pat, and they happen to encounter a UFO over Mansfield. I'm wondering if this wasn't some psychological experiment done by the military. Perhaps they were given some sort of psychotropic drug, and either the military sent an aircraft to intercept them over Mansfield to see how they would react, or maybe that was just mass hallucination. That fun notion of folie à deux, and it just overtook them. I think it's more than just coincidence that they were returning from Wright Pat when they encountered this thing.
It would be interesting here to trace other sightings and find officers in the military who were at Wright-Patterson may have undergone this. You wonder how many sightings might have been the result of psychological experiments, and you got to be lucky that people didn't die as a result.
Oh, yeah, and maybe they did. Maybe there were some instances, you mentioned that the guy that's writing that book about fatal encounters with UFOs. I know there have been a few pilots in the military that have supposedly encountered UFOs that crashed, that people have died.
Of course, there's the Mantell incident, but we don't know whether he underwent any treatment at Wright-Patterson. In any case, we've got James Renner. Don't know what kind of treatment he's had, and some people wonder what kind of treatment I've had. But that's another story, because this is the Paracast.
Free from the shackles of corporate America, we're the place for independent thinkers. GCN.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Hi, Ted Anderson. I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
If you need to say happy birthday, happy anniversary, thank you, or simply I'm thinking of you, ProFlowers.com is the key. ProFlowers has stunning bouquets, like the best-selling 100 blooms for $19.99. Plus, ProFlowers will include a glass vase for free. Sending someone a wonderful surprise of beautiful flowers sent fresh from the fields is easy. Choose the bouquet you like, pick the delivery date, and each order is 100% guaranteed. Plus, all bouquets from ProFlowers are guaranteed to last at least 7 full days. Beautiful, fragrant flowers, picked fresh and sent to your loved one for lasting enjoyment. To get this incredible savings and send someone 100 gorgeous blooms with a free vase for $19.99, go to ProFlowers.com, click the blue microphone in the top right corner, and enter code PLOW. That's ProFlowers.com. Click the mic and enter code PLOW.
The following hour is brought to you by MidasResources.com, your trusted source for precious metals since 1996. Call Midas today at 1-800-686-2237.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Chris O'Brien's on special assignment. James Renner, author of Came from Ohio, is joining us. And he's regaling us with some very unusual stories that are related to UFOs, but also other weird creatures. By the way, one of our listeners had dropped in a question about Dale Spaur. His name is Burnt State, and he calls himself open-minded and critical. And his question here is, do you think the singling out of Dale Spaur as a scapegoat, which ultimately destroyed his life, is something that would repeat today with a UFO witness, or is society more accepting and believing of the UFO incident?
It's an interesting question.
Because, basically he was damned in the newspapers when the Air Force said, we're just chasing Venus.
Yeah. So I don't know. Who knows the answer to that question until it happens? I noticed, lately, the best sightings are from people that post, videos up on YouTube. And it seems that, if anything, the reporting is getting more anonymous, and people aren't so concerned with who is actually seeing these things, but what they've seen, because we've got it on film. I will say this, speaking of film and these sightings, one thing that I did uncover was that Dale Spaur took photographs of this saucer and had the presence of mind to put them in a roll and hide them in his freezer. But when Hector Quintanilla and the people from Project Blue Book came into town to ask him about this chase, he ended up admitting to taking these photographs and handed them over. Blue Book took them away, and to this day, nobody has seen that film. Even through public records requests, they have not turned up. So somewhere in some archives are Dale Spaur's photographs of that saucer from that chase.
It's all being kept in Warehouse 13. You kind of go back to the scene in the first Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Indiana Jones movie, where the Ark of the Covenant is brought to the government, and as Indiana Jones's girlfriend leave this building, they're assured everything is in good care, and then you have this scene where somebody's sticking it into a warehouse, never to be seen again. You wonder if there's a warehouse somewhere, or warehouses, where lots of strange things are being kept, and nobody wants to admit they have any relevance, or they can't figure it out, so it's out of sight, out of mind. And after generations of changes in bureaucrats and military leadership, who remembers anymore?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I guarantee it. There's some secrets out there that are just sitting in a box in some old government building that hopefully people, when the demolition crews come in to wipe it down, we'll at least open the boxes. And I think maybe we'll find some of these wonderful secrets at that point. But no, I thought that was the perfect ending to Raiders, because that's exactly how it would happen. It's, in the end, the government is just bureaucracy. They don't know what to do with these things. They'll just put them in a box and stick them in a corner somewhere.
Listen, they can't find 100,000 vets who just want medical treatment.
This is true. It's very sad. Yeah, but no, that's exactly right. We'll pay for these, huge, needless wars, but try getting the money for helping these vets when they return home. It's very sad. My mother works at the VA, and I know a lot of people involved in that. It's crazy. It's crazy. We live in crazy times.
Very unfortunately crazy. Let me get back to the questions here, because a few relate to the UFO thing. Joey K22, who has been a member of our forum since 2009, but has only posted 24 messages out of nearly 5 years in our forums, and you were lucky enough to get 3 of them.
Come on, Joey. Pick it up.
Okay, Joey K22. Number 1, do you have any cases of men in black type encounters in Ohio over the years? And of course, you know about the Men in Black, not the ones played by Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith, but the ones who influenced them.
Yeah. Sure. Well, just outside of Ohio, the only one I've come across that it seemed that was really going on was the Mothman encounter, which is included in It Came From Ohio, because I actually found evidence that the Mothman sightings began in West Salem, Ohio, the night before Mothman was seen in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I traveled down to Point Pleasant and spoke to the guy that runs the museum, the Mothman Museum. And he says even to this day they'll show up sometimes. And there was a young woman who was running the museum one night and claims that 2 pale-faced men in black came into the store and asked her very bizarre questions and then left and got into this weird shiny car and drove off.
They didn't have this little stick that the light glows and they lose their memories. Hey, let me just mention something here. Before we go on with any discussions of Mothman, did you read John Keel's book, Mothman Prophecies?
I have not read the whole thing. I've read excerpts and I've looked into it a little bit. But he's a fascinating character.
He sure was. I knew him. And in the final years of his life, I actually tried to get him on the Paracast. And this was maybe the last year or two of his life. And if you thought he was crusty when he was younger, he was extremely crusty as an old man. And we made the effort. As a matter of fact, I had a former co-host of this show leave a message on his answering machine. We got his phone number from one of our acting producers, Tim Beckley, who comes on occasionally, give us some ideas for guests. And Beckley gets this nasty call from Keel the next day. Why did you give out the phone number? Okay, now, let me just tell you that when I mentioned that fellow who studies cryptozoology and also serial killers, Lauren Coleman, he has the theory that shorn of all the extra aspects and exaggerations of Mothman, most of them were owls. That's his theory.
I would say he's probably right. That's kind of where I came up at the end of my reporting too. But I think it's just as interesting an explanation as anything else. Because if it was an owl, which I think it probably was, it was either of a species that is no longer around, or it was a genetic mutation that allowed it to be, 3 times the size of what it should have been. If it was an owl, it was an owl that was bigger than any owl that we've ever had in captivity.
Of course, we would go back to the pale-faced men in black or whatever.
Yeah, what are they doing around if it's just an owl?
Right, that doesn't make sense to me. Unless it was a genetic experiment, maybe the people over at Wright-Patterson were taking owls and saying, let's make them larger.
Sure.
We'll screw around with their genes and see if we can grow larger owls. All right.
That would be fun too. I don't know. I love that case because it's so weird. It's not the typical UFO sighting or Bigfoot. It's something different. There's that, and the Loveland frog, which is in the same vein of weirdness too.
We'll get to the Loveland frog in a moment, probably in our next segment, because I think that segues well into it. But getting back to Mothman, the reason there's any mysticism at all about it or any mystery is because of the crash of the Silver Bridge. But understand here, what's really bad, the tragic state in this country, is the fact that a lot of these bridges, especially older bridges, are not in terribly good states of repair. So in terms of silver bridges, there are probably too many of them around the country. With or without a Mothman, they could come crashing down.
Yeah.
And that's really tragic.
It seems to just be a tragic coincidence for sure.
Right. I mean, there was a book called The Silver Bridge from Gray Barker where he was suggesting in rather an allegorical way in the book that maybe this was the Banshee, the creature warning of impending death.
Yeah,
and that's why the Mothman was around, right?
Harbinger of Doom.
Sure. There's going to be a harbinger of doom here if we don't do this break. James Renner joins us. The book is It Came from Ohio. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. Do you need a website? Well, you can get a great deal on hosting services with Namecheap's legendary coupon code. They're offering substantial hosting discounts on shared hosting, business hosting, VPS hosting, reseller hosting, and even dedicated servers. Namecheap is preferred by millions. It's backed by a money-back guarantee. Use the coupon code legendary to cash in on the special deal at Namecheap.com, Namecheap.com.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there's The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
Hi, John Hubner from Midas Resources. Are you tired of watching your hard-earned assets dwindle away? As government spending is out of hand and the Federal Reserve is creating in excess of $20 billion a week, are you tired of stockbrokers gambling away your hard-earned money? Is this market a setup for a crash greater than 1987? Too many of today's policies resemble those that led to the collapse of 1929. This is John Hubner, and that was me in 2007. And we all know what happened when the subprime credit bubble burst. By March 2009, the dollar lost 50% of its value. The entire U.S. banking system was on the verge of collapsing. Like all financial problems of the past, is history about to repeat itself? Call me, John Hubner, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 129, before it's too late to protect yourself. Will the oncoming catastrophe take all private IRAs, 401ks with it? There is a way to protect your hard-earned assets. Call me, John Hubner, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 129.
We live in a complicated society. Stressful issues are always popping up. Have you ever been treated unfairly by someone? Have you ever been overcharged for a repair? Have you ever signed a contract or a document? Worried about identity theft? How many times have you been in those unique situations where you just wanted to call an attorney to find out if you're right or wrong, or what your legal rights are? But every time you think about calling an attorney, what do you think about first? That's right. Who do you call, and how much will it cost? Our friends at Legal Shield have found a solution. With a nationwide network of 6,900 attorneys who average 19 years of experience, Legal Shield's law firms take over 40,000 calls per week helping their members. For less than $20 per month, you can have access to Legal Shield on everything from the trivial to the traumatic. Let Legal Shield stand up for your rights at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com. Or call 855-340-SAVE, 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
Question: could too many GMO foods and toxins be overloading your digestive and immune systems? Answer: yes. If you're searching for a powerful detox that's gentle enough to use every day, use Pro EM1 from Terraganics. Pro EM1 is a powerful liquid probiotic that uses good bacteria to suppress pathogens and gently eliminate toxins from your body. A healthy digestive system will cleanse and remove toxins, support weight loss, improve absorption of food nutrients, and aid in controlling yeast and other infections. Pro EM1 is made with only non-GMO and certified organic ingredients, has no preservatives, and is dairy, soy, wheat, and gluten-free. Pro EM1 is the key to your digestive health. Order Pro EM1 Daily Probiotic Cleanse at Terraganics.com, spelled Terraganix.com, or call toll-free 866-369-3678. That's 866-369-3678. Also available through Amazon Prime. Pro EM1 from Terraganics. Life's getting better.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Chris O'Brien is on special assignment with this Adventures Unlimited event and everything. He's in Illinois. He bypassed Ohio, but probably flew over. No, he's coming from Arizona. No way he'd be doing that. But maybe they took a detour. So he was looking for Mothman, just in case. James Renner wrote it came from Ohio. So let's talk about the frog. From the Mothman to the frog. How's that work?
I love this story. The Loveland Frog, it's one of those that I came across that the first time somebody told me about it, I just laughed at them, and you just don't know where to begin. I loved it so much that the Loveland Frog is actually, he becomes kind of a character in my first novel, The Man from Primrose Lane, and it's the Loveland Frog part of it interjects 2 or 3 times over the course of the main story. But here's the gist. So back in 1972, and you're noticing kind of a trend here with all these weird stories from Ohio. They all occurred from like 1966 until 72, 73. Something very bizarre was going on around here. This suburb of Cincinnati called Loveland. It's this quaint little village on the banks of the Little Miami River, kind of out in the boonies out that way. And this officer was driving along Twitewee Road, patrolling the neighborhood, saw what he thought was a dead dog on the side of the road, this near the bridge over the Little Miami River. And he stops his cruiser, shines a light on it, gets out, and this thing kind of rises up onto 2 feet. And he describes it as being about 5 feet tall and looking like something cross between a man and a frog. Just this weird wrinkly skin, this big mouth, and weird eyes. And of course, what does he do? Any police officer involved in first contact with an extraterrestrial civilization or whatever this was, draws his weapon and fires at it. And this thing jumps away down the banks into the river, disappears. He's got to file a police report because he fired his service weapon. So he files this report. The paper picks it up, just like Dale Spaur. It becomes this news story, and they start ridiculing this officer. Shockey is his name. And his partner, Mark Matthews, 2 days later, encounters the same thing right by the bridge over the Little Miami. Sees the same thing, fires at it again. It gets away. Those are the two main sightings of what has become known as the Loveland Frog. And again, I went into it. I wanted to find the nugget of truth that is behind all these rumors and myths. And so the first thing I did when I went down there, of course, is to try and contact Ray Shockey, this officer that encountered the Loveland Frog, and he's never given an interview about it. And his partner, Mark Matthews, has only talked to one other reporter, and it was when he finally talked, he kind of discredited his own story and said, it was probably just an iguana that got loose from somebody's cage. And so I asked Shockey about this, and he didn't want to talk about any of it. He's like, it gives me nothing but grief, and everybody makes fun of me. And I said, okay, and I'm turning to leave, and he stops me, and he says, well, I will tell you this. It wasn't an iguana. And I said, well, what was it? And he said, it was much bigger. And that's all he would say. So I did a little more digging, and I found something very strange. In the Historical Society down in Loveland, I found these stories about the Twitewee Indian tribe, which is kind of an odd tribe that gets lumped into the other tribes of the Ohio River Valley. And but nobody's really sure how this tribe fits in with the other cultures. They seem to be kind of apart from everything else. There's a story about this group of French missionaries that came through the region back in the 1600s. And they wrote the story about how they encountered the Twitewee people near the Miami River. And the Twitewee people warned them of a being called the Shawnahook. And they said the Shawnahook was a river demon, and it lived in the Miami River. And there was a truce between the river demons and the Twitewee people where they would leave each other alone as long as they didn't mess around with each other. So they told the French missionaries, don't mess with the Shawnahook. And they described it as a half-man, half-frog creature. So their description of this thing that was living in the river matches exactly what Shockey saw 300 years later. And that just gave me chills when I read that. So I firmly believe there's something we don't know to this day that's living in the river around Loveland, Ohio.
Now, when you talk about strange creatures in the rivers and the lakes, there is a chapter at the end of the book called Ohio's Oldest Monster.
Yeah.
Subtitle, this is going to be something we'll get onto. for a bit of a discussion. For centuries, a sea serpent has stalked the shores of Lake Erie. What a place to go. Tell us about the sea serpent.
I finished up this book a couple years ago, back in 2012. I took it to my editor and publisher, David Gray. He's up here in Cleveland, and he does all my local interest books. And I gave it to him, and he said, look, I'd really like one more story. We should have 13 in here. 13's a scary number, and, I'd really want 13. I said, well, yeah, sure. I'm sure I can find something. He said, well, I want you to write a chapter about the Lake Erie monster, the sea serpent that lives in Lake Erie. And I laughed, and I said, no, look, I want this book. I'm still a reporter. I still have some credibility to worry about. I want it to be only kind of credible sightings. And I said, there's nothing I've ever seen about this Lake Erie sea monster that leads me to believe it could be credible. He said, just do some research, see what you can find. So I did. Didn't have anything else to do, so I went over the Cleveland State archives of the old Cleveland Press newspapers and Plain Dealers and Cleveland Registers. And I decided to go back to as far back as I could go and see if there were any reports. And sure enough, I found a handful of old newspaper reports from the 1800s and 1700s that we had completely forgotten about, that hadn't been mentioned in, over 100 years. And there were these sightings of this sea monster living in Lake Erie, and they all seemed to be centered where the Sandusky River empties into the lake over on the west side of the state, and getting closer to Toledo than Cleveland. I found that interesting, because if it was just a hoax, it would be systematically reported across all Lake Erie. But all the reports came from the same region, which meant to me that people were definitely seeing something.
Were they all describing a creature that was more or less identical? And I'm going to have you answer that question on the other side of the segment, because it is fascinating, and we've got so much more to explore. Lots of stories. The book is It Came From Ohio, True Tales of the Weird, Wild, and Unexplained, and then we'll even cover a little bit about serial killers with James Renner. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast.
The nation's largest independently owned and operated talk radio network. The Genesis Communications Network. GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's Lemke soft.com. Lemkesoft.com. Lemke soft.com.
I will never forget the day my son Jeremy told me he hated me and slammed the door in my face. I'm behavioral therapist Janet Lehman. Behavior problems can turn the child you love and your life into a nightmare. That's why my husband James and I created the Total Transformation, the step-by-step program that shows you how to fix the worst behavior problems and get your child to respect and listen to you again. No matter what the behavior, defiance, backtalk, angry outbursts, disrespect, we can help you stop it. Now you can get the Total Transformation for free. All you need to do is get the program and let us know how it works for you. You can keep it forever for free.
Limited number of free programs available. Call now. 1-888-912-1595. 1-888-912-1595. That's 1-888-912-1595. 1-888-912-1595.
At 30dayfoodsupply.com, you can now purchase a one-of-a-kind product not available anywhere else. A meatless burger dry mix in 4 delicious flavors. With our new Oregon Trail Foods vegan burgers, all you do is add water and fry. They need no refrigeration. They're packaged in Mylar bags with an oxygen absorber for a long shelf life. They're non-GMO. They're gluten, soy, nut, and chemical-free, but they're loaded with flavor. And a good source of carbs and protein, yet low in sodium. Flavors include Italian, spicy Mexican, 6 vegetable, and black bean olive. Go to 30dayfoodsupply.com or call 541-229-0010 and order today. Eat them every day, take them camping, or save them for an emergency. Check them out at 30dayfoodsupply.com and click on the vegan burger icon. That's 30dayfoodsupply.com, where all of our products are produced in Oregon by Oregon Trail Foods. 30dayfoodsupply.com.
The human body is extraordinary. Despite all the stresses we inflict upon it, it still works hard to stay in balance. Thousands upon thousands of people rely upon Heart and Body Extract to help their body stay balanced. This excellent 100% natural herbal formula helps maintain healthy blood pressure levels, cleans arteries, promotes good circulation, balances cholesterol, and more. HB Extract, paired with healthy lifestyle choices like good nutrition and exercise, can give you a life free of pain, sickness, and fear. Recapture your youthful vitality and experience your body healing itself with the aid of HB Extract. It's extremely effective and it starts working in just days. Visit hbextract.com to learn more and to read scores of testimonials from satisfied customers. And we've never increased our price in over 10 years. That makes Heart and Body Extract as great a value now as it was the first day we sold it. A healthy heart is a happy heart. Call 866-295-5305 or go to hbextract.com.
This is Leslie Kane, and I'm with the Coalition for Freedom of Information, and you are listening to the Paracast.
Here on the Paracast, Chris O'Brien on special assignment. The book we're talking about with James Renner is It Came from Ohio. So looking at the Lake Erie sea serpents, do they all fit a specific description?
They do. They all seem to be not the typical, when you think lake monster, you think Loch Ness monster. You think the kind of, it looks like an old plesiosaur, right? These all were more like a giant eel or something along those lines. Nobody really mentioned flippers or anything like that. Just a giant serpent that was on the lake. And let me just read you this very small report. This report is from 1898. A hunter discovered 4 abnormally large eggs buried in the sand on the shore of Lake Erie. Believing the eggs were fossils, the man took them home. And here I'm quoting from the Plain Dealer. This is the major newspaper to this day in Cleveland, Ohio. Report from 1898. He put them in a blanket near the kitchen stove. He forgot about them, but when the family went into the kitchen the day following, they were astonished to see 4 snakes wiggling around the kitchen floor. The reptiles were from 2.5 to 5 feet long, though no bigger around than a broomstick. The Fosters have kept 1 snake, and since last Saturday when it was hatched, it has grown more than 1 foot in diameter. The paper confidently concluded, the west end of Lake Erie is still inhabited by sea serpents of no inconsiderable size. That made me a believer. I think there was definitely something in the lake, probably up until about the 1950s. I think it was probably a freshwater snake that has since gone extinct. I think it was some sort of large snake that no longer exists. That's the only explanation I can come up with, because they were definitely seeing something.
Well, the key being here is that you're finding conventional explanations for all these things. It's not something paranormal or anything. It is maybe some kind of missing link or a few remnants of a species that no longer populates the world so much.
And that's why I still call myself a skeptic for the most part. But I think it depends on what you mean by conventional. To me, a forgotten species or an extinct species of owl, like the Mothman, or a snake like the monster, or this craft that the military might have devised that they encountered over Mansfield. That's as incredible to me as anything that could be paranormal. And I'm not saying I don't believe in the paranormal. You know, the encounter I had with with the little man and the giant dog out in the woods behind my house, you know, when I was 8 years old, I think that was certainly something that was verging into the supernatural, paranormal. You know, was it I'm a credible reporter, but I have to ask myself, you know, was it some sort of fae creature? Was it some sort of bizarre fairy? Was it, you know, what the hell was that thing? Any idea?
Well, if we had the answers, this wouldn't be the Paracast anymore. This would be something about conventional science. But this follows Joey K22's next question, which is actually question 3. We'll get back to question 2 in a moment. What are the most interesting cryptozoological cases you've heard of? We've talked about sea serpents.
Yeah.
What about, of course, Bigfoot?
Yeah. Oh, Bigfoot's always good, you know, for a yarn or a campfire tale. You know, I investigated the Bigfoot sightings here in Ohio. A lot of them are seen around Salt Fork. And I think there's some really good sightings down there that date back into the 50s and 60s. And what surprised me is when I went down to Salt Fork and I started talking to the rangers that work there on a daily basis, you know, they were the first ones to tell me. And I thought they'd laugh and say, "Oh, get out of here. You know, there's no Bigfoot around." But the rangers are the first ones to tell you there's something in the woods out there, and they're convinced that there's Sasquatch. And I spoke to this one ranger who said he was sitting in the post late at night. It was like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and had this feeling that something was looking at him. Turned around and looked at the window that was behind his desk, and there was this hairy creature face thing looking at him, and he jumped and screamed, and this thing kind of jumped back and ran away, and he ran outside to see what it was and couldn't find anything other than this horrible, horrible smell by the window. A professor, I think, a very credible person of some sort, reported seeing a mother Sasquatch and a baby at a lake. And so a lot of Bigfoot hunters go down around a certain lake at Salt Fork and look for this Bigfoot. But I'll tell you, I've been down there, and the woods are enormous, and it's easy to get lost. And if there is a Bigfoot in Ohio, there's plenty of room for him to live down there and never be seen.
Okay, do you have a feeling as to what Bigfoot really is? Obviously, they're seeing something. Are they seeing bears? Are they seeing some hermit in the woods who, you know, just left civilization because they had it with the way things are? They lost their job, they lost their family, and they just had to get away? What?
Well, the hermit explanation is always interesting. I've always liked the idea that what we're seeing is Wookiees that crash landed on the Millennium Falcon 500 years ago. But that might just be from a comic book I read once. But now, as far as what I really think they're saying is, I don't know. I'm kind of on this one. I might kind of be a believer. I think there really is some sort of missing link. For if that's not what we're truly seeing here in Ohio, it's certainly, I think, what we're seeing up in the Pacific Northwest. Those sightings are too credible to dismiss, and too many people have seen them. I think it's a species of great ape, maybe even closer along the lines between orangutan and human. It's interesting. You know, when I was growing up, you know, out in the sticks, there was this one winter where there was a rash of Bigfoot sightings near my house, and it was reported in the paper almost daily for a while. People were seeing Bigfoot, and it got to the point where obviously they were seeing something. There were too many reports coming in, and then winter got really cold, and all of a sudden the sightings stopped. Everybody stopped seeing Bigfoot. And then in the spring, a couple of rangers in the nearby park system were walking down a trail doing maintenance, and they came across a corpse of an orangutan. And that's what people were seeing. That's what they were reporting as Bigfoot out by us. This orangutan got in the woods. It was somebody's, illegal backyard zoo. And there are a couple of them out that way. And they had an orangutan that escaped, and they never reported it because they didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, that leads us, in terms of belief, to this question from Jeff Davis. As a skilled hunter, Do you feel intuitively that there is an external agent involved in the scope of the paranormal, or as some, do you feel the paranormal is an anomalous projection or extension of the self-contained human mind that we simply do not understand at this time? So, like, in a sense, I guess we're creating our own experiences, even though they might be externally real.
Sure. I don't know. What I think, here's what I think. I think we live in a very strange universe, a very strange reality. At least that's always been my experience. And I think reality is not as grounded in order and logic as we've come to believe it is. I think it's not as real as it appears to be. And I think, certainly, even looking into true crime, which is, what I do more often, what I've come to find in reporting serial killers and true crime in general is this synchronicity that runs between everything. These weird coincidences, as some people would call them. And it just seems to me that there's something more going on, that, we're in somebody else's story that's developing over time. It's a little too ordered for it to be random and completely scientific and logical.
We've got a lot more to cover with James Renner, because you're in
the Paracast.
We are the premier independent talk radio network, the Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
First came Attack of the Rockoids, and it was a critically acclaimed success. And now there is The Coming of the Protectors. A former military intelligence man is contacted by a space woman in a dream that turns out to be a nightmare because evil forces on her distant planet are planning to conquer the Earth. This is gripping science fiction of the classic kind. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Find out more at rockoids.com. That's Rockoids, ROCKOIDS.com.
So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. The site went down. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Talk to a sales rep at iWeb.com. Use the promo code TechNightOwl for a special discount.
This alert just came in. This special announcement is for business owners and leaders of organizations who've been waiting for the right time to build. General Steel has made it impossible to wait any longer with rock-bottom prices that could save you thousands. That's right, General Steel, America's leader in pre-engineered structures, is offering buildings at prices you will never see again. Don't miss these prices. A 50 by 100 for $35,000. You heard right, that's 5,000 square feet for $35,000. Manufacturers, if you need a larger building, try a 100 by 100 commercial building for $129,000. You can't afford to rent with these prices. Imagine a 70 by 100-foot church building for under $69,000. With the economy improving and interest rates still at historic lows, you can't afford to wait. So call 866-91-STEEL. Lock in your price now. Call 866-91-STEEL. That's 866-917-8335.
We all know that Berkey Water Purification Systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 6 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey Water Filtration Systems. The Berkey Light Systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light system today, complete with 2 black Berkey elements for only $231, and the Berkey Guy will ship your order free of charge. With the purchase of a Berkey Light, the Berkey Guy is also offering a set of fluoride and arsenic filters for only $39.99. That's over 30% off the retail price. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at goberkey.com. That's goberkey.com today.
I'm Kay Swirling from KSCO Radio in Santa Cruz. I'm 93 years old, and I'm a big fan of Alex Jones because he has the courage to speak his mind more than just about anyone I know. Alex is just as bothered as I am about all the advertising you hear for toxic prescription drugs that make you sicker, not healthy. I prefer to give my body all 90 essential nutrients it needs for life to prevent disease, not compound it. My favorite complete supplement is Beyond Tangy Tangerine from Youngevity, which I take every day along with EFA Plus and Beyond OsteoFX. I recommend you go online to InfoWarsTeam.com to purchase these products and make them part of your daily regimen to get healthy and live longer. InfoWarsTeam.com.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
James Renner is joining us. The book is It Came From Ohio. Chris O'Brien on special assignment. He'll be back next week. And in the early part of July, we'll be featuring our old friend Nick Redfern, who's got a new book out called Close Encounters of the Fatal Kind. Are people involved in UFO research suffering an early end to their lives? I sure hope not. Let me ask you kind of a left field question from Joey K22. This is number 2 of his questions, by the way.
Here's Joey again.
Joey's back. Joey, we're waiting for message number 25 next, okay? Are there any paranormal hotspots in Ohio? And for those who don't know what I mean, it's a region, a place that seems to attract more unusual events than anything else. What do you think?
Well, sure. Yeah, I think that was my backyard.
Okay.
Growing up, with those Indian burial mounds. And no, I think there are a number of hotspots. There are weird things that happen, around Ravenna, south of Ravenna where I was living. Certainly, people would say some parts of Cleveland are very bizarre.
I know some bizarre people in Cleveland, but that's another story.
Harvey Pekar, the late great Harvey Pekar.
No personal friends.
Yeah, there might be a few. Mansfield's always been strange. There's a lot of weird stuff going down there. With the Mansfield Reformatory, there's a lot of stories about ghosts and creepy things that happen. And Mansfield has the giant robot Electro and the museum down there that I always visit when I get a chance. And just one of those places that's far enough from any major city that it becomes kind of its own thing with its own legends and myths. But you get around Point Pleasant and Gallipolis where the Mothman was seen. And if you ever get a chance, you definitely have to visit Yellow Springs. That's a weird place. That's actually, Yellow Springs is where Rod Serling, who hosted The Twilight Zone, is one of the most brilliant writers of the 20th century, in my opinion. That's where he went to school, out at Antioch in Yellow Springs. And I went out there to report on Dave Chappelle when Dave Chappelle disappeared for a while. And his house is actually out there.
So Rod Serling was pretty weird then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, you go out there and you realize that everything you're seeing in Yellow Springs was some sort of inspiration for one of Rod Serling's Twilight Zone episodes. Everything there and the people there remind you of the characters in his stories, and you just get this weird vibe. And it's produced some very strange people, Rod Serling, Dave Chappelle, just a few of them, or a couple of them. And it's got, I've always wondered, why I don't see old hippies. I've never encountered old hippies until I went to Yellow Springs, and it seems to be where old hippies go to retire. it's just this community of hippies. And maybe it's strange because everybody there is always high. And there's certainly more head shops per capita than any place else I've ever visited. But and it could just be this weird secondhand, high that everybody's getting from everybody else there. But something about Yellow Springs has always struck me as very paranormal, very supernatural, very bizarre.
All right, Yellow Springs, let's pay a visit. Can you tell us of any specific events we'd like to hear about?
In Yellow Springs?
Sure.
The best thing I can think of off the top of my head is, the only story I can think of off the top of my head about Yellow Springs is how back in the 1970s, you could call up the local pizza joint and ask for the special pizza with with extra mushrooms. And of course, the mushrooms would be psychedelic mushrooms, and they would deliver it to you. Here's peyote on demand. So it's just more of a vibe down there than anything else. Definitely visit if you get a chance, and it's not far from Wright Pat. If you're down here visiting Wright Pat, it's right next door.
Now, of course, Wright-Patterson, if you get too close, they'll stop you, or what?
Well, Wright-Patterson is still this very bizarre Air Force base, supposedly where they keep the crash from Roswell. I've been down there and I've investigated it. Oddly enough, a friend of mine from high school got a job at Wright Pat. He works for the Air Force and he's a brilliant guy. And every time we're together, I see him maybe once a year at parties. And every time we're together, I'll ask him, I say, you got to tell me what you're working on down at Wright Pat, just as a joke, not thinking he's really doing anything. And he'd always laugh it off. And after 9/11, it got to the point where he's like, well, you really shouldn't be asking me this stuff. They want us to report anybody that's asking about Wright Pat. And I thought he was joking again. And, because, it just seemed a little too paranoid. Well, one night, it's about 7-8 years ago, we're at a party, and I get him super drunk. This guy he's just 5 sheets to the wind. And then I ask him what he does at Wright Pat. And he thought about it for a second, and he said, well, I'll tell you this much. He said, for the last month, I've been working on a project, and the whole point of what I was doing for this project was trying to turn this device on. And he said, 2 days ago, I finally was able to figure out how to turn it on. And that's all he told me. And I got goosebumps. So I don't know what the hell he was working on down there, but it was interesting. He was working on something very interesting.
I'll tell you, at least he got you frightened.
Yeah, right.
Maybe that was his intention there. He was deliberately trying to get you frightened over this.
It could be. I certainly didn't ask about it again.
Now, when the book came out, and we know it's obviously a locally focused book about events in Ohio, and except for Dale Spaur's case where they went into Pennsylvania. Yeah. Did you find that readers were calling you on the phone saying, hey, something happened to me, or maybe they wrote email to you or to your publisher?
Yeah, certainly. And that's how all of these books kind of, came out, and how these stories came to me. I'll give these stories at libraries, or these readings, and I'll talk about these stories at libraries. And afterwards, people come up to me and want to share their own stories. It happens with true crime, too. People come up, my mother vanished in 1970. I'd really need help trying to find her. And, so you just write those down, and if you ever get a chance to look at them, you check them out. I haven't had much of a chance to look into any of the stories that have found their way to me since that book was published. I've been focused on finishing up a new novel and working on that end of things. I want to take what I've learned with reporting and use those tricks into telling mysteries and writing about mysteries that I can actually solve, so I have to write fiction.
Well, that gives you the added benefit here. You create the characters, the situations, and you can take a mystery and find an answer, even though in the real world that mystery is never solved.
Right. It's much more rewarding that way, which is why I incorporated the Loveland Frog into Man from Primrose Lane. It was an easy way to explore that story and then come up with my own very bizarre explanation for it.
Let's think about the other creature. That's the hairy creature that's in the room we haven't talked about. Not Bigfoot, but werewolves.
Yeah, sure. Everybody likes a good werewolf story. There's this werewolf that was spotted up near Toledo in this town of, is it Defiance? The Defiance werewolf? Am I getting that right? It's one of those, it's a very bizarre story that I'm not sure, again, going into it, how excited I was, because it's like, come on, werewolves, really? But here's what I liked about it was these stories came out of Defiance back in, again, 1972. Very bizarre time for Ohio, but people were starting to see this hairy monster around these railroad tracks, and described it as a werewolf. And they said this werewolf came up and tried to attack them with a 2x4. And my first question is, what's a werewolf need with a 2x4? That seems a little bit of an overkill. Werewolves, they've got they've got the claws and the fangs and everything. What do they need with any other sort of weapon? And then I realized this is about the time that there were a lot of monster movies coming out, werewolf movies. I was a teenage werewolf and things like that. So it was kind of the fad, the craze at the time.
We'll get into teenage werewolves and other werewolves. And by the way, werewolves are still popular. We've got a TV show called Bitten, Teen Wolf. We've got a TV show called True Blood. Yeah. True Blood, of course, the final season. They got all sorts of creatures there. James Renner is joining us. You're in the Paracast.
We are America's largest independently owned communications network, GCN.
Henry Ford once said, "A man who stops advertising to save money is like a man who stops a clock to save time." Alex Castle here, the National Account Executive at GCN. I have the ability to customize a national radio campaign based on your budget while targeting your demographic. Contact me to find out how national radio can help your business be more profitable at 877-996-4327, extension 177. That's 877-996-4327, extension 177, and help me help you bring your business to the next level.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
Got a simple question for you. Can you sell? Yes? Okay. Can you sell the intangible? If yes, and you'd like to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, with no overtime, no weekends, if you're passionate about not closing sales, but about opening relationships, if you truly have a desire to serve global clients who need your advertising expertise, and you're local to the Twin Cities and Burnsville, are hardworking, self-driven, with experience in sales, marketing, or advertising, are personable and a whiz on the phone, GCN wants to talk with you right now. GCN, the Genesis Communications Network, is one of the largest independent talk radio networks in the world, and we're hiring right now. We offer benefits and an excellent commission structure. Experience preferred, but we'll train the right person. Is that you? Submit your resume today to advertise@gcnlive.com. Again, that's advertise@gcnlive.com. Come work with the Genesis Communications Network, an equal opportunity employer.
The following hour is brought to you by MidasResources.com. Call Midas Resources today to protect your future at 1-800-686-2237.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
On the Paracast, the final 4 segments we spend with James Renner. The book is It Came from Ohio, and now he's focusing on werewolves who came from Ohio. And I think of the old phrase from a movie long ago gone, even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Remember that?
The Wolfman, Lon Chaney.
Right, 1941. They did a remake of that movie where Anthony Hopkins plays Larry Talbot's father. And I thought it was just the worst movie.
It sounds pretty horrible.
It was, because his father ends up being the werewolf, too. His father bit him and made him into a werewolf. You know, it was more fun with the original movie where the person who bites him is Bela Lugosi. At least that makes sense. Bela Lugosi was famous for biting people. Tell us more about the werewolf.
Yeah. I always liked the movie Wolf, by the way. Most people have forgotten about it, but...
Right. Michelle Pfeiffer and Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, and James Spader.
Right. James Spader, of course, of Stargate, and now Blacklist.
Yeah,
now we have the balding James Spader in Blacklist, where he just shows how a great actor can chew the scenery.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So there were these werewolf sightings up around Toledo, and, you know, there was this craze for werewolf movies, and it appears what they were probably encountering was a crazy rail rider, you know, a hobo, you know, because, again, you go back to the 2x4 and the fact that this thing was always seen by the railroad tracks and this old depot. That's probably what it was. There's probably an easy explanation for the werewolf. But I love the mythos of werewolves. I'd love to believe that that could happen. I remember, you know, being terrified as a kid when I got bit by the neighbor's dog, thinking that I was going to turn into a werewolf at night around the full moon. So it's a fun idea. I wish it were true.
But you're not going to tell us that your hands became a little bit hairy.
Well, certainly not on the record.
Of course. Well, this is totally off the record. We're not going to deal with that. In the real world where people report werewolves, are they really talking about deranged people who maybe didn't take a shave?
Yeah, that's probably what's going on. You know, I live in Akron, Ohio, and, you know, you go downtown on any given day, and I'd see 2 or 3 people that, you know, I would say kind of look like werewolves that just need some medication and a shave. And I'm sure that's what was going on. But it makes for a good story, you know. I love a good campfire story. You know, and one of the other stories I included in this was, you know, one that was not grounded in any hard truth or report, but was still very scary to me, which was the legend of Red Eyes that was told to us Boy Scouts around the campfire at Camp Manitowoc, which isn't too far from Akron. And it's a Boy Scout camp, and the way the story goes is, and mind you, this is what they would tell us when we were 11, 12, 13 years old at camp for the first time. The ranger that was popular from the 1920s back in Camp Manitowoc was this very tall dude, and he lived at camp all of his life. That's all he ever did. And back in the 1950s, he finally passed away. And at the time, the camp was having some hardships, and they didn't have enough money to buy him a casket that could fit his frame. He would have needed a special casket built for his large body. So to save money, they got a regular casket, and they chopped off his head to make room. And then they put his head in his lap and buried him in the woods of Camp Manitowoc. And if you're a Boy Scout and you're walking back to your camp at night, you may encounter red eyes, which are these glowing red eyes that are part of this detached head of this ranger. And they travel through the forest at night searching for the rest of his body. And it's a story that they tell the young Boy Scouts, so that they don't wander off away from their troop and get lost in the woods. But it'll scare the bejesus out of you when you're thinking about it in your tent later that night. Everybody loves a good campfire story.
But no reality to any of that.
Well, I didn't think there was. And then one day, I was about 16, 17 years old. And me and a good buddy of mine named Toby and Jeremy, the three of us had our own little group, and we'd go explore at night and go cause mischief and hang toilet paper around other people's campsites. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we walked away from our campsite heading down towards Concord Lodge in this section of Camp Manitowoc that's just woods on both sides of this trail. And all of a sudden, Toby grabs my arm and looks out into the woods and says, oh my God, there's red eyes. And I laughed, and I'm like, whatever, dude. And he said, no, look. And I look in the woods, and about 50 feet into the woods were these 2 glowing red eyes. And the breath was just taken out of me. And I've never been so afraid in my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here we are. We are experiencing something paranormal, something supernatural. And we may never live to tell about it. And so what do? We're 3 young men at that time, and we start daring each other. We're not going to run away from this thing. But somebody's got to find out what it is and have an encounter with this thing. And we start daring each other. And finally I said, I was the youngest of the group. And finally I looked at Toby and Jeremy, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go see what it is. And they said, yeah, you can't do it. You're too afraid. And I go running off into the woods after this thing, straight at red eyes, waiting for this thing to devour me. And I get to it, and I find that it's an old oil derrick, and it's slowly chugging away and drawing oil up out of the forest, this part of this field. And the 2 red eyes were the red indicator lights at the bottom of the derrick, and this little electronic box. And but I see what it is. Of course, they're still back on the trail, and they don't know anything. And so what do? I start screaming bloody murder, and they scream and go running off to camp thinking I've been eaten by red eyes. And about an hour later, I go sauntering back into camp, and they're cowered in their tent, waiting for the police to arrive. So that was my encounter with the real red eyes.
The real red eye being something very conventional.
Again, yeah. I'm sorry, but yes, all my stories usually end up back in the world of conventional explanations.
Except, of course, when we get into things like UFOs and stuff like that, where things can be mighty weird. There could be some conventional explanations or a mixture. We never can tell. Now, someday I think I'd like to tell you the story about the Summerville, South Carolina light. This is where the ghost of someone who worked for the railroad is seen holding a lantern, which, of course, is the light. I went out there. I didn't see anything strange, but maybe I'll tell you more about it. Let's go back into the questions here, because I want to focus a little bit here, and we don't normally do this because we're so much on paranormal events, but you kind of think serial killers are in themselves paranormal. So question number 2 from Jeff Davis. With the greatest respect for your fascination and direct pursuit of serial killers, in your estimation, are these deranged yet highly functional serial killers a self-contained and therefore solely singularly motivated, mission-based within demented and psychologically damaged human psyche? What a long question. Or do you feel that possibly an external form of evil comes into play wherein these individuals are directly influenced by a completely independent evil volition due to their inviting hunger for the same? In other words, he's talking about demons. I guess the question is really about demon possession. But you know what? We have to do the break now, and we'll have James Renner's answer and more about serial killers and about the ones depicted on TV and how close might they be to the ones who are real. The book is called It Came from Ohio. I came from Brooklyn, by the way. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Neighbors, are you tired of dealing with a slow web hosting provider? Well, check out A2 Hosting and their screaming fast Swift server platform. They even have SSDs that load pages 300% faster than the competition. Ready to give your site a speed boost? Well, tell you what, neighbors, head on over to a2hosting.com. That's A2, that's the number 2, a2hosting.com. Check out their Prime hosting account. And get this, neighbors, they're even giving you an exclusive 25% off discount for all our listeners. 25%. And remember, their Guru Crew support team is standing by 24/7, 365 days a year to answer any of your questions. Now, to get the discount, use the coupon code GENE when you check out.
Have you ever felt like the United States government knows way too much about your financial affairs? I continue to hear stories about property seizures, frozen bank accounts, confiscation of stocks and bonds. It makes me wonder if the U.S. citizen will ever again have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unfortunately, with the Drug and Money Laundering Act, the IRS Revenue Ruling 6045 of 1984, and the Trading with the Enemy Act and Franklin D. Roosevelt's Executive Order of 1933, some precious metal holdings are subject to government intervention. For this reason, Midas Resources has prepared a report explaining the boundaries of trading precious metals privately. Whether if you have any intention of trading with Midas Resources or not, I have instructed my representatives to give this report out free. Call for your free copy at 1-800-686-2237. When investing, always proceed with caution. Again, call 1-800-686-2237. Exercise your legal right to trade metals privately. 1-800-686-2237.
What good is a Big Berkey water filter?
We get that question a lot here at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. And in a word, the answer is protection. Protection from water main breaks, E. coli contamination, environmental chemical spills, pesticide runoff, chlorine taste and smell, and all forms of fluoride. Plus, Big Berkey water filters are the original gravity water filter system and most trusted on the market for a reason. Tested by multiple independent NSF EPA certified labs, they are the gold standard in water purification. At only 1.7 cents a gallon, a single set of filters can last for 5 to 10 years. That means big savings. Big Berkey, the one that's powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water. Get a Big Berkey today at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. GCN listeners receive 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit our website or call 1-877-99-BERKEY. That's 877-99-BERKEY. Big Berkey Water Filters, for the love of clean water.
I will never forget the day my son Jeremy told me he hated me and slammed the door in my face. I'm behavioral therapist Janet Lehman. Behavior problems can turn the child you love and your life into a nightmare. That's why my husband James and I created the Total Transformation, the step-by-step program that shows you how to fix the worst behavior problems and get your child to respect and listen to you again. No matter what the behavior, defiance, backtalk, angry outbursts, disrespect, we can help you stop it. Now you can get the Total Transformation for free. All you need to do is get the program and let us know how it works for you. You can keep it forever for free.
Limited number of free programs available. Call now. 1-888-912-1595. 1-888-912-1595. That's 1-888-912-1595. 1-888-912-1595.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Final 3 segments of the show with James Renner. The book is It Came From Ohio, but he chases after serial killers. We got a really involved question there from Jeff Davis, mostly saying, are they just evil people or are they possessed or influenced by demons? What's your take?
Oddly enough, I'm going to tell you probably my most unconventional story of the segment of your interview. And it has to do with serial killers and not with UFOs and flying saucers and Bigfoot and things like that. So the crime that I've investigated the longest is the unsolved abduction and murder of Amy Mihalovic. And she was this 10-year-old girl that was abducted on October 27th, 1989, from Bay Village, Ohio. She was taken at 2:30 in the afternoon from a busy plaza in broad daylight across the street from the Bay Village police station, Bay Village is a Tony suburb of West Cleveland, and it's where the FBI, local FBI, it's where they raise their families. It's the safest community around, and this happened in broad daylight right there. I became fascinated with it because I was the same age as Amy. We were both born in 1978. She'd be 36 this year. And it just was a case that always stuck with me because we were the same age. I was living with my mother in Rocky River, which is right next door to Bay Village. I'd see this girl's posters, missing posters up all over the place, and eventually they found her body a few months later in Ashland County. To this day, nobody's ever been arrested for the murder. That was my first book, was Amy, My Search for Her Killer. It came out in 2006, and all these other books kind of came out of that. I went into it thinking that after so many years, the police probably knew who did it, just didn't have enough evidence to arrest them, because that's what we see on CSI and Law and Order. But when I started looking into it, I found something very bizarre, and that's that so many men had the means, motive, and opportunity to commit the crime. A number of men, at least 10, had taken note of Amy, and these were creepy individuals, and they all kind of were keeping tabs on her. And if she wasn't abducted by the person that took her, she might have been abducted by somebody else. This was something that an FBI agent told me. He said, if he hadn't taken her, somebody else might have. Perhaps what happened was she went to the plaza to meet with a certain abductor, and then somebody else came and took her before that. Could be one of the reasons why it was so hard to solve. Over the years, I've learned of a man who, at the time that Amy was abducted, was a school teacher. He taught science, middle school science in Amherst, which is not too far from Bay Village. A number of things were very interesting about him. He fit the description of the person that people saw Amy with and who led her away from the plaza. And he had some run-ins with kids in his school district. He was investigated for inappropriate behavior, things like that. When the FBI finally started asking about him and looking and digging into his background in 2005, he was 1 year away from collecting his pension and finishing and retiring from teaching. He abruptly quit teaching and disappeared. He showed up 6 months later in a homeless shelter in Key West, Florida, which is as far as you can get from Bay Village without leaving the country. He has since left the homeless shelter, is now managing the Wendy's on Key West. And I learned about this guy in 2008. I had to fly down. I had to meet this guy. I had to see him for myself. So I went down, and all I knew was he was somewhere in Key West. And in my mind, Key West is an island. It can't really be that big, right? I get down there. Of course, Key West is just huge. And, I really didn't know where to begin. I started showing his picture around at different restaurants and businesses. And eventually I got some leads. They said, yeah, he looks like the guy that plays ragtime piano down at the piano bar. And I knew that was him because he played ragtime piano in Disney World before he became a teacher. So I'd go down to the piano bar, and of course the piano bar had shuttered, a couple weeks before, and I just missed him. Actually, the first place I went to was the Wendy's, and I had mentioned, I kind of gave away the twist of the story, but at the time I didn't know he worked at the Wendy's. And it was the first place I went because that's where he would take the kids that he'd shined to back in Ohio. His special treat would be to take them for Wendy's after school, and that's kind of how he groomed them. But when I went to Wendy's, I didn't see him there. I was looking for him in the customer line or just hanging out in the restaurant. I wasn't considering that he might actually be working there. So I spent the next 36 hours trying to find him, hunting him down on this island. And finally, I decided, I'm like, look, I'll just go to the homeless shelter. And I started asking around the homeless shelter, and one guy said, well, if anybody knows where he's at, it's Mr. Frisbee. And I said, well, who's Mr. Frisbee? And the guide said, well, he's the guy tossing the Frisbee down on the beach. And so I went over and talked to Mr. Frisbee, and he's like, yeah, I know this guy. He's my friend. He looked out for me in the homeless shelter. I said, where is he? What happened to him? And he said, oh, he's managing the Wendy's. So I drove over to the Wendy's, and he was supposed to be working that afternoon. And I talked to the woman behind the counter, and she said, well, strangest thing, he called in sick. I said, oh, that's strange. She's like, yeah, he never calls in sick, and he called in sick today. I said, well, can you find out where he lives, or do you have a phone number? Because, I kind of bluffed. I said, I'm a former student. I'd really like to talk to him. And so she went and pulled his paperwork, and she said, well, this is strange. He didn't list an address. But I know he's got to live on the northeast side of the island because I see him over there sometimes jogging. And I knew he was an avid jogger, so I said over there. And it gets to the point where I have an hour left on the island before I have to drive off and catch my flight.
This sounds like a movie.
Oh, doesn't it? It's a very movie-like situation that I find myself in. And so I've got an hour left. I got to catch my flight in Miami. I have to leave. And I realize I'm not going to find this guy. And frustrated, I stop at a stop sign in the suburban part of Key West. And I put my head down, and I'm not a religious guy. I grew up, I went to church, a few times, but I wasn't raised in the church. And I just sent this message out, call it a prayer, call it a message to the universe, whatever. I just said, I sent this message out. It was, if this is the guy and I'm supposed to meet him, I need help because I have to leave and I'm not finding him. He walked in front of my car at that exact moment. And he crossed in front of my car at the stop sign. And I pull over and I get out and I call after him. And we have this conversation on the corner of the street for 10 minutes. And during those 10 minutes, he never once denies killing Amy. He says things like there were things in his past that he doesn't remember. The whole time I was with him, there was this odd darkness around him that is figurative. It was something I felt, but it was also literal. The light was funny around him.
Ooh, this is more fascinating than ever. And we'll find out about his encounter with this alleged killer in a moment. At least he's here to live to tell the tale. James Renner joins us. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast.
A little right, a little left, but always independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's Lemke soft.com. Lemkesoft.com. Lemke soft.com.
At 30dayfoodsupply.com, you can now purchase a one-of-a-kind product not available anywhere else. A meatless burger dry mix in 4 delicious flavors. With our new Oregon Trail Foods vegan burgers, all you do is add water and fry. They need no refrigeration. They're packaged in Mylar bags with an oxygen absorber for a long shelf life. They're non-GMO. They're gluten, soy, nut, and chemical-free, but they're loaded with flavor. And a good source of carbs and protein, yet low in sodium. Flavors include Italian, spicy Mexican, 6-vegetable, and black bean olive. Go to 30dayfoodsupply.com or call 541-229-0010 and order today. Eat them every day, take them camping, or save them for an emergency. Check them out at 30dayfoodsupply.com and click on the vegan burger icon. That's 30dayfoodsupply.com, where all of our products are produced in Oregon by Oregon Trail Foods. 30dayfoodsupply.com.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99, and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
There are many things the human body can do very well, but maintaining the proper pH level isn't always one of them. That's where AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops can make a world of difference. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps your body do what's natural. Just a few drops a day helps rid your body of harmful waste and acid while promoting health and restoring vibrance and energy. Alkalizing boosts your immune system and can help fight headaches, irritability, cramping, and insomnia. Alkalizing also helps the body fight depression and even bone loss. To learn more about the importance of alkalizing and how you can find life-changing and vital balance, please visit AlkaVision's brand new website at alkavision.com. Same great products, but now easier to use and more informative than ever before. To get your very own Plasma pH Drops for just $29.95, call 800-518-7615 or visit alkavision.com. That's ALKA vision.com. Alkalize your body and supercharge your health at the new alkavision.com.
This is Kurt70, author of UFO Mysteries, and you're listening to the Paracast.
James Renner joining us. The book is It Came from Ohio. He also chases after serial killers. In this case, you chased after somebody that you actually encountered. For a moment, did you ever think this guy would suddenly strike back at you?
I was almost hoping he would.
Oh? Were you armed and dangerous?
No, I wasn't, but we were on a very busy intersection, and I figured, if I pushed him, maybe push him, meaning with my interview, not like physically push him. If I really pushed this guy with my questions, perhaps he would attack me, and then he would be arrested, and that could be probable cause to search his house. It might have opened up some avenues for the investigation, but so I was almost hoping he would.
You are really kind of pushing the envelope there.
Yeah, maybe. I think a psychologist might view it as self-destructive behavior. But, I've been looking for this guy since I was 11 years old, I think he's probably the person that did it. At the very least, I know he's a very evil guy, from the things that I discovered that he had done to other of his students. But yeah, there was talking about the paranormal and supernatural, there was darkness around him, and I think the question originally that got us talking about this is, whether there are things like demons. And I would say that encounter with that suspect, it's one of those defining moments where, yes, there was a demon there. There's no getting around it. There was something around that man. And,
but there's nothing that he told you that you could have used to go back to the authorities and say, he's the guy.
Well, that's not entirely true, because I did specifically ask him, did you kill Amy Mihalovic? And he did not say no. That's enough in a court of law where it's almost considered an admission. He was asked a direct question, and he didn't say no. So that's enough to be called to the stand and to testify on that bit of information. And certainly opens up him for further investigation and interest for the FBI and the police in that case. And I'm not the only one that has sensed something, especially with this case. And I'd say 99.9% of these cases have nothing to do with the supernatural or paranormal. But something about this case, it does. you speak to the FBI agents who have worked this case for 20-some years. I spoke to one, and, this is a very credible guy, and we're having this conversation about this true crime, this unsolved mystery. And suddenly, he gets to the point where he kind of trusts me. And he leans across the table and he says, have you ever, what he said was, here are the words, have you ever heard the voices? And I look at him, what are you talking about? What voices? And he says, well, have you ever been to the site where her body was found on the anniversary of her abduction? And I said, no, I'm usually at Bay Village Plaza where she was abducted. I've never decided to be at that site. He said, well, go down there. Be at that site on the anniversary of her abduction. He says, I've done it every year since then. He says, when you're down there, you will hear the voice of her killer. He said, I don't know how to explain it. He said, but every year I'm down there. And about 7, 8 o'clock at night, when it starts getting dark, I can hear it. I can hear his voice. So something about this case, there's something darker, something specifically evil about it.
But certainly not enough to get the authorities to arrest this guy after all these years.
How do you arrest a guy? You can't arrest a guy because some reporters come up to you and told you that there's a demon, around this guy.
They may even look at you and decide that you have a problem.
Yeah, right? Yeah. No, I'm sure. Thankfully, there's another FBI agent, at least one, that has, encountered the same thing. So I don't look entirely crazy. And hopefully the background and my other work has spoken for it. But, it is what it is. As far as the case goes, they did assign a retired FBI agent, a guy named Phil Torsney, back in February of this year to reopen the case. And he's a great pick. Torsney is one of the guys that brought in Whitey Bulger over in Boston. And he's clicking on this and working on it in his spare time. And if anybody can bring it to a close, I think it's him.
So how many years is it now?
Well, it's 89, so what does that make it? We're coming up on the 25th anniversary.
Right. So after 25 years, there's no statute of limitations with murder. And you have to think here, if they get him for this one, there may be lots of other unsolved cases for which these people might be responsible.
You would think, but I don't think that's the case with this one. I think one of the reasons we haven't caught him is he's never done it again. I think this guy is a serial abuser, but I think with this incident, he took Amy not knowing where it would lead, and the murder, I think, scared him so much that he's never been drawn to it again. This suspect that I like for it in Key West, Florida, the one thing that's very interesting from a psychological standpoint is when he was young, he was about 8 years old, he had a twin sister, and she died when they were 8, and when she was still prepubescent, which Amy was at the time of her abduction. And, you get into the minds of these serial killers or abusers or whatever, and one of the things you start to see is many of them are reliving these traumatic events from their childhood, and they're trying to recreate them in order to draw some sort of understanding from it. And I think that's exactly what this guy has done. And Amy was a surrogate for his twin sister. And it went beyond where he thought he was going to take it. And he's been terrified ever since then and has never committed another crime. At least murder. He's never murdered again.
All right. This is something where maybe if we ever get an update, we'd like to learn more about it. But let's look at fantasy versus reality.
Sure.
So you have a fascination with serial killers. I think it's most blatant in a TV show called The Following, where you have this serial killer who has followers who kill because they worship him.
Oh, sure.
That's the Kevin Bacon program. And then you have Criminal Minds, where you have this special group of FBI agents who go out around the country and they trace reports of serial killers and they try to capture them. Now, obviously, they have to solve this in 43 minutes plus commercials. And sometimes these stories extend week after week. Like The Following is going into its third year, this coming year, this third season of 13 episodes a season. So it's basically one long serialized story, whereas the others are usually 1 or 2 episodes. But then if you look at these TV shows, and certainly where they cover a serial killer in a Law and Order variant like Law and Order SVU, which is the current one, the last one that's available, or in CSI. How close to reality are these shows? Because supposedly they are inspired by real stories.
Yeah. How close are they to reality? About as close as the Twilight series was to reality, or SpongeBob SquarePants is to reality. They have no basis in reality. I have to say I despise those shows because of it, because they've actually done damage. They've created a generation of potential jurors who believe that these cases can be solved easily, that every case needs DNA evidence, that every case needs a smoking gun. So it's frustrating. I can't watch them because I know everything that's wrong with them. And every police officer, that's been doing homicide for any length of time will say the same thing. And there's no basis in reality. And one of the things that you see on these programs a lot is this idea of the satanic cult, or this cult of killers, or this, Satanism comes up a lot. Everybody wants to blame, these unsolved murders or disappearances on Satanists that are sacrificing them to the demigods or whatever.
We'll get into the myths and the realities in a moment. James Renner, author of It Came From Ohio. We're focusing on his interest in serial killers. Watch out. You're in
the Paracast.
Independently leading the way for the nation. Compelling talk for every political persuasion. We are GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors, classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
A sudden change in the wind. The day grows dark as ominous clouds move in and lightning begins to carve arcs in the sky. And you realize you are not prepared.
I am telling you to take cover.
The number of intense storms is increasing exponentially in the U.S. Tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, and droughts are happening with greater magnitude and frequency. If you are choosing to rely on the government to save you,
And no one's coming to help them.
you could be dead wrong. The first step towards self-reliance in the face of disaster is a visit to MyPatriotSupply.com. There you'll find the absolute best prices on storable foods, non-GMO seeds, emergency water filtration devices, and so much more. All orders over $49 qualify for free shipping in the lower 48. Visit us online or call 866-229-0927. That's 866-229-0927 and speak to one of our preparedness advisors today. Remember, before it's time to survive, it's time to prepare. MyPatriotSupply.com.
Americans have always been ready to defend, to serve, and to honor those who defended and are defending all of us. So this month, the Freeze Dry Guy honors and serves Americans with our meat, rice, and potato sale. Our unit includes 4 number 10 cans of quality Mountain House cooked diced beef, ground beef, diced chicken, white rice, and 2 cans of FDG dehydrated diced potatoes. 158 servings per case unit. And during the Freeze Dry Guy's meat, rice, and potato sale, get 1 case for only $1 $179, 2 cases for only $355, or get 3 cases for only $515. And all come with lots of valuable freebies. For details, click freezedryguy.com and hurry. Sale ends soon. Go to freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD. Plus free shipping to the lower 48 states from the Freeze Dry Guy. The finest freeze-dried and dehydrated foods available anywhere for long-term storage.
Hey everybody, Jason Lewis here with another great idea from JasonLewisTeam.com. Now, how would you like an energy drink that's actually good for you? That's right, one that not only gives you an afternoon pick-me-up, but that's loaded with the most important antioxidants for reducing the damage from stress. It's called Pollen Burst, and it's a natural burst of energy that lasts for hours. Now, most energy drinks rely on a massive dose of caffeine, sugar, or even vitamin B. Pollen Burst takes a more balanced approach, and that's why I like it. I also love the fact that Pollen Burst has plenty of vitamin D and green tea extract. This is the best energy drink I've ever tried. So trust me, you'll not only like it better than the others, you'll love the way it's individually packaged for freshness as well. They've got these on-the-go stick packs. They're great. Pollen Burst. It's available at JasonLewisTeam.com or simply call 1-855-310-TEAM. For a natural burst of energy, it's Pollen Burst at JasonLewisTeam.com or 1-855-310-TEAM.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
Final segment with James Renner. He writes about true crime and also about paranormal events, such as the book It Came from Ohio. So back to serial killers. So things are always cut and dry and very simplistic on the TV shows. Everything is due to a satanic cult. So the serial killer in general is just an individual who acts alone doing his or her skullduggery?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You know, there's been one or two instances where you have I actually encountered one of the stories, the title story to a book that I wrote called The Serial Killer's Apprentice, which was a collection of 13 unsolved murders and mysteries, was about a serial killer, one of the rare instances where he was working with somebody else. And I found evidence that it was a serial killer that was training his nephew in his trade. So that's kind of creepy. But as far as this notion that there are these satanic cults out there that are operating across the country that are abducting young kids and sacrificing them, that is just a bunch of hooey. To this date, there's not one credible, confirmed, verified instance of a satanic cult in the United States that have been caught sacrificing a kid or anybody for that matter. So it's I don't know why it became a big trope in TV. Because there's nothing, even in reality to pull from it. But suddenly everybody believes that that's what's really going on.
The other common theme you see in something like Criminal Minds is there's some childhood trauma. He's trying to relate to his mother, which takes you back to Psycho. He's trying to relate to some stigma that confronted him when he was a child or was confronted with other traumas, maybe being abused by fellow kids or something. So therefore, he or she becomes a serial killer. But the other question is, how many are male or female? Is it mostly male?
Oh, 99.5 are male. The few, there's like one or Eileen Warnos, and one or two others, that are women. But that's another thing that really gets me is, and I see this a lot in books, and it's part of, it's grounded, I think, in feminism, which, I consider myself, certainly I try and write strong women characters when I write fiction. I'm very aware of that. But, this notion of making the twist at the end of the story and that it's a woman that's doing the serial killings. There's no basis, in fact, for that. It's 99.5% men. Women just they just don't do that, and part of it is the physicalness of it. I mean, you've got if you're that person, you're taking this other life, you're taking this other person. You have to have the physical means to do that. And I just think women are, they have a grace in them that is lacking. I think men don't have that certain gene, at least most of us. So I don't like that. This thing that you're seeing a lot in stories, that they make the killer a woman, and it's not grounded in reality.
They want to have equal opportunity offenders on these shows. Also, obviously, they catch them in 43 minutes, except for the few that are used for a series arc. In the real world, is there a percentage of those cases that are closed? Or do you find that a lot of these cases, because of the complicated nature, never seem to get solved?
Yeah, it's a depressing statistic, but I think I encountered, it's like, for all these unsolved mysteries and disappearances and murders, only about 1/10 of them are ever solved. Sometimes it'll take, it could take 20, 25 years. And even when you catch these killers in these tragic stories, there's really no closure that it's presented the way they are in TV and film, which is one of the reasons I got away from it, and I'm, and moved into fiction, screenplays and novels. I'm having a lot more fun with it. And I don't want to research anymore. I don't want to research another unsolved murder of a kid or a woman or a disappearance in general, because you get invested in the people that are, at the center of that story. You get invested in the families that of the missing. I don't care to invest my soul into that. And maybe it was the experience in Key West that did that. It probably was, where it just, you come out of that encounter just a little worse for wear, and you just want to do something fun. And so that's what I do. I have fun writing fiction now and hanging out with my kids, and that's the only way to stay sane. For the detectives that work these cases every day, and thank God for them, because I can't do it. But the detectives that think about these cases every single day for 20, 30 years, the only way they stay sane is they go home at the end of the night and they hug their kids. They're young, they're little boys and girls, and that's what you need. You need to be grounded in family, and you gotta have fun.
You have to wonder also how they manage to keep at this for 20, 30 years, or do they do their normal work each day, pound the pavement, do their investigative work, and maybe at night or on the weekends or when they have a little spare time, they say, let me get back to this cold case and see what's going on.
Yeah, that's probably, and they get criticized for that sometimes. Oh, you only worked an hour on this case in the last week, but you don't want them working on this 24/7 for years. I mean, you got to think about what that would do to a person. But it's interesting. The characters you mentioned, we see on these shows, the one thing I think they do get right is this idea that something traumatic happened in the character's childhood that led them to become a killer or, an offender in some way. And I think that's very true. Every case that I've seen that investigated that, that's true. They've invariably had some sort of trauma as a kid. So that's the one thing they do get right.
Well, in general, they do have advisors to all these shows. Mm-hmm. Policemen, policewomen, they have people from the FBI or whoever, and they give them basic information. They help them fact-check procedure and things that happen. But the actual incidents, well, it's fiction. They want to keep you coming back week after week, year after year, and some of these shows just last forever, like CSI or Law and Order SVU is going into its 16th year.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing. These shows never seem to end, and people still want them. It's like even NCIS about the Naval Investigative Agency. It's been going on year after year. They get all these ratings, so obviously there's an audience for them.
We're hardwired. I think humans are hardwired to love mystery. I think we evolved where we have brains that want to figure things out, that want to answer puzzles and questions, and that's what's led us to be so successful And I think instinctually we love mysteries, and we love a good mystery. And there's no higher stakes for a mystery than a good murder mystery. You're dealing with life and death. And so there's a reason why the stories work so well. It's what we like.
We like this book. It came from Ohio. I had fun reading it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Where can our listeners find more of what you do?
Actually, I forgot to mention this, but I'm actually going to be in Illinois, that's where you're at, right?
Well, actually, I'm in Arizona, but our co-host is there this weekend.
I'm going to be at the Illinois County Con at Round Lake Beach on June 28th and 29th. You can catch me there, or in Northeast Ohio. I've got jamesrenner.com is where you can go for my stories. You can find The Man from Primrose Lane, a novel that came out in 2012 that has the Loveland Frog in it, at any bookstore across the United States. And my next novel, The Great Forgetting, which you might like, it's all about government conspiracy theories and paranoia, comes out next May 2015.
You can also find us on Twitter. We're known as the Paracast. Look for the Paracast on Twitter. On Facebook, there are 2 Paracast fan clubs, and maybe we'll figure out a way to make them one. Chris O'Brien's site is OurStrangePlanet.com. OurStrangePlanet.com. His new book is Stalking the Herd. If you buy it from the site and not from Amazon anywhere else, you buy it from the site, he'll autograph it for you. How about that? James Renner, thanks for joining us on the Paracast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.